Hola, ¿qué tal? ¿Cómo están? Ricardo López Juárez en Los Ángeles para hablar de béisbol y hablar concretamente acerca del Salón de la Fama del Béisbol, Cooperstown y de Fernando Valenzuela. Y para eso saludo y es un honor y es un gusto tener aquí a Josh Rawitch, el presidente del Salón de la Fama del Béisbol. Josh, thank you so much for being with me today to talk about baseball, Fernando, and the whole thing. How are you?
I'm doing great, Ricardo. Thank you. The honor is mine, and always good to see you.
So, what's the first thing that comes to your mind when you listen or hear the name Fernando Valenzuela? What comes up to mind?
Well, first and foremost is just what a special man he was. I considered him a very good friend and had the opportunity to work with him for many years, probably more than a decade in Los Angeles when I worked at the Dodgers. And so I miss him every day. He was incredibly funny, fun to be on the golf course with, fun to spend time in the broadcast booth with. And as somebody who grew up a Dodger fan, I always loved watching him pitch as a kid. So it's sad to me that he's not with us anymore, but his impact has lasted for many, many years.
So, Josh, Fernando, it's in this list of eight candidates in a era committee ballot that we will know who is being selected from that list of eight legends on December 7th. It's a great list with Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens, Don Mattingly, Dale Murphy, Jeff Kent, Carlos Delgado, Gary Sheffield, Fernando Valenzuela. So, can you explain briefly to us how this contemporary baseball committee works?
Yeah, so first is the ballot, the building of the eight names. That's hard to get on the ballot. It is very challenging when you look at all the players from 1980 through today who are off the baseball writers ballot. It becomes very hard to make a ballot of just eight names. But of course, we want the process to be hard to get into the Hall of Fame. It's not supposed to be easy. And as soon as we announced this ballot of eight names, which is put together by a historical overview committee of 11 historians and reporters and writers, as soon as we announced it, we heard from people who were unhappy that their candidate didn't even make the ballot. So just to make the ballot is obviously a big moment. It certainly shows the impact that Fernando and the other seven had. And basically what will happen now is on December 1st, we will announce the 16 names who are going to be voting in that committee. It's right, usually around 7 or 8 Hall of Famers, 7 or 8 executives, which can be club presidents, club owners, general managers, people who have spent a very long time in the game. And then we also include a few historians and reporters to provide that perspective. So those 16 people will come into a room on December 7th. They'll have a meeting where all eight names are brought up in the room, and everybody has a chance to speak about all the different people on the ballot. And then any of these 16 people can vote for 0, 1, 2, or 3 candidates. They don't have to vote for 3, but they can vote for as many as 3, or they can choose to vote for nobody. And then anybody who gets 12 votes out of those 16, which is 75%, they get elected to the Hall of Fame. So it sounds a little complicated, but it's a very simple process, to be honest with you. It's very easy to follow once you've kind of got the hang of it.
What does make Fernando a good candidate in this list? You know, Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens are monsters. Don Mattingly, the forgotten idol and an icon. Gary Sheffield, so consistent. But what does Fernando bring to the table to be considered by this list of historians and reporters?
Well, I wouldn't want to speak for the Historical Overview Committee. They would probably be the right ones to explain why they chose him over others. But I think you can generally speak about clearly his impact on the game of baseball was very, very significant, very different from anybody who's ever played baseball before. And his statistics, what he did not just in 1981, but over the course of his entire career, the impact he had on the field, the impact he had off the field. He's won world championships and Cy Young and Rookie of the Year. A lot of those are the things that the Historical Overview Committee looks at when they decide who deserves to be looked at again. And the purpose of this committee, which is very important to make sure you explain, the purpose is to make sure that if somebody wasn't elected by the Baseball Writers Association of America, that nobody got missed. The goal of this committee is not to see if we can add 1 or 2 or 3 Hall of Famers every year. That's not really the goal. It's not to try to make sure that every era has the same amount of Hall of Famers. The purpose of this committee is just to make sure that if the writers got it, quote unquote, wrong, according to the people on the committee, that there's another process for them to get elected. For the entire time of our existence, we have never wanted to be the ones who decide who gets a plaque in the Hall of Fame gallery. We have always left that to the baseball writers and to the committees of experts like the ones that we're putting together. But that's why we have a 3-story museum that tells the history of baseball, including Fernando Valenzuela, and we have an entire exhibit called Viva Baseball, which is all about baseball in Mexico and Dominican Republic and Venezuela and Cuba and Puerto Rico and all over Latin America. We want to make sure that story is told, even if somebody doesn't get elected into the Hall of Fame. And so whether it's Fernando or Carlos Delgado, or whether it's Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens, who are not in the Hall of Fame right now, but their story is told. Whether it's Pete Rose and Shoeless Joe Jackson, or whoever your favorite player is, Jeff Kent or Dale Murphy or Don Mattingly, every single one of those people's stories are told here in Cooperstown. And we believe our job here is to tell those stories, and we leave it up to other people to decide who gets a plaque in the plaque gallery.
And that's why fans must go to Cooperstown to visit the museum, the great job that George Rawitch and his team are doing. But talking about Fernando, what in your opinion, brought Fernando back to the conversation? Because he wasn't really mentioned for a long time. Then he passes, the Dodgers win the World Series, and the Dodgers finally retire his number 34, which they waited forever, and many people were like, why they don't just retire his number? Nobody wears his number anymore. They retire his number, and then he comes like his legacy it's back in a great way in the last 2 years. But in your opinion, what brought Fernando back to the conversation?
I don't know how to answer that, because I'm not on those calls with the committee that builds the ballot, so I don't know whether any of that had an impact. But I do know he's been considered for many, many years. His name has always been on the list of people who are eligible and who might make it onto the ballot. But as I said at the beginning, what's very hard is there's a lot of tremendous players who haven't been on the ballot, or who in this case, people like Dwight Evans or Lou Whitaker or Kenny Lofton. So many names that I hear people say, how can you possibly have a ballot without them? And the answer is, it's hard. We don't want to have a 15-person ballot. It would be way too hard to spend all this time giving a true, honest conversation to each of those people. And so we feel like the right number is 8, and we feel like that's probably what makes it hard to get on the ballot. But Fernando has always been one of those names, those 20, 30 names that are always considered. He just hasn't been in the top 8 or 10 the last handful of times. And certainly it's nice to see his name on there, and that he'll have a chance to be discussed and reviewed. And I guess we're going to have to see what happens in just a couple of weeks.
How is going to be December 7th? That day, we will know the new members of the Hall of Fame in the winter meetings in Orlando. Will you be there, and how you think it's going to be for you as a president of the Hall of Fame?
Well, so every year I have the honor of making that announcement live on MLB Network. So certainly fans should tune in on Sunday evening, December 7th on MLB Network. And the meeting happens in the morning. So it's actually a very exciting day. It's an incredible honor to sit in the room and listen to the conversation that's happening. I don't get a vote, but ultimately myself and our board chairman, Jane Forbes Clark, we tally up the votes at the end of the process, and then we call anybody who's elected. So in the case of Fernando, we would call one of the members of his family to let him know if he's elected. If they aren't elected, we don't make any. We only call the people who get 12 votes, and then I go down the hall and make an announcement in the hotel ballroom there on the MLB Network set. So it'll be an exciting time for everybody, and whether or not anyone gets elected, it's a great process here, and we hope people will come to Cooperstown and see the the joys of all the Dodgers who have been elected in the past, all of the class of 2026, and certainly for Dodger fans who love what's happened the last few years, you'd see a lot of really cool stuff here if you come and visit us in Cooperstown.
No doubt about that, and we will be tuning in on December 7th. Thank you so much, Josh, for your generous time and all your knowledge about this process, and good luck to Fernando and all the 7 finalists in this ERA committee ballot. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ricardo. Muchísimas gracias.